and welcome to the third installment of the AIAS and AIA WIELD Ask an Architect series as part of Women's History Month. I'm Sara Sepanski with HKS here in DC, and I'm sitting with Nakita Reed, co-founder and principal of Encore Sustainable Design based in Baltimore. And Nakita, as you know, the WIELD community shares and celebrates success stories of women and minorities in our field as a way of empowering emerging professionals in their career. And just last fall, Nakita actually wielded her story at the WIELD event right here in the District Architecture Center. And also last year, AIA DC awarded you Emerging Architect.
Yeah, it was a great year.
Yes. And then I was just reading that about 2 weeks ago, you were named Young Architect of the Year by DC's Council of Engineering and Architectural Societies.
Correct.
So congratulations.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, 2018 was a big year and kind of getting my name more out there, so it was great.
And I'm very excited to welcome you back to the deck.
Yes, absolutely. Glad
Thank
to be
you
here.
for making the drive down from Baltimore also.
Yes, no problem.
So.
No problem. Great.
Well, to start things off, I'm very impressed by the number of acronyms after your name. A lot of credentials. And I will admit that I am only very familiar with half of them. So I thought it'd be interesting for our listeners if you could describe the acronyms, what the credential is.
Sure.
And maybe do it in the order that you achieved it in your career.
Absolutely. Sure. All right. So I have a ridiculous amount of acronyms behind my name. So there is Lead AP, BD, and C. So that's, I'm a Lead AP specializing in building design and construction. That's through the U.S. Green Building Council. I'm also part of AIA, which you all know. NOMA, which is the National Organization of Minority Architects. It's very similar to AIA, but it's another organization. Also, there's APT, which is the Association for Preservation Technology. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that, think of it as the AIA, but for historic preservationists. So it's another organization that mostly historic preservationists, conservators, people who do the trades and work on the building are in. And then the last one that I have is GGP, which is a Green Globes professional. So Green Globes is another green rating system. It's comparable to LEED. And the final acronym that I don't have yet, but I'm going after, is CPHC, which is a Certified Passive House Consultant, which is also another sustainability rating system. So yes, it's a lot of acronyms. I have them all there, one, because I'm proud of the organizations and the work that it took to get them. Some of them are testing, some of them are just membership. It's also a great conversation starter when the acronyms are longer than my name. So it's a fun thing to have.
Yeah, and personally, I think the more we can be exposed to in terms of organizations, credentials, just paths to success, the better.
Absolutely.
Emerging professionals and students.
Yeah.
So, since meeting you at last year's WIELD event, where you were a speaker, storyteller, I've been reflecting on two aspects of your story. One being the fact that you were able to focus in early on and know where your passion lay in the broad range of the architecture field, and then create a space for you to do just that. And secondly, how you co-founded your own firm as opposed to just striking out on your own. We have so many examples of that, and some people would say, oh, it'd be easier with two. Others would say, oh, it'd be harder with two. So I was wondering if you could kind of start with the story about when you realized what you were passionate about within architecture, and how you got to creating this unique space where you're just very happy and successful in the profession.
So it's a loaded question, but I love it. And so I knew I wanted to be an architect even in high school, and I was actually taking drafting courses in high school. I was very fortunate to go to a high school that had those. But I guess my mom used to work at a homeless shelter. And so she used to work at a homeless shelter. Every now and then there would be families that would come stay with us for a little bit. And then my stepdad was from Georgetown, lived in the area, and driving through DC, and this was like early 90s or so. DC was a very different place, lots of more vacant buildings and all that. And there was a disconnect for me between seeing homeless people on the street and vacant buildings that didn't have people in them. And I was like, well, why can't those go together? That would make so much more sense. So kind of early on, I just started having a thing for dilapidated buildings. My parents didn't love it, but you know, it was what it was. And so when I went to architecture school, because I knew, all right, I'm going to deal with existing buildings and homelessness and people, affordable housing, that was my thing. So I went to architecture school, went to UVA. It was a great program, but I didn't learn anything about existing buildings. And so then I realized, oh, I'm not going to learn anything about existing buildings through architecture, then I need to get into historic preservation. And so that's when I went back to grad school and did a dual degree in historic preservation and architecture. Because a lot of people are like, oh, are you more preservation or more architecture? And for me, it's always been both. Same way I'm not more black or more female. It's, you know, equal measures. So preservation and architecture have always gone hand in hand. I was fortunate to have internships and work during undergrad for another architect. We stayed in contact after I graduated, and then I was working at a global architecture firm, doing a lot of work that I liked, but then realizing that I wasn't getting paid for it at the consultant level. My now business partner, who I used to work for, his firm transitioned in the recession, and so after my dad died when I was younger, I was 27 or so, I was like, I could die tomorrow. What am I doing? Yeah. So it was serendipitous. Me and my business partner went out to lunch, and he offered me partnership in his firm, which was branded on his name. And I said no, because I was like, I don't want to trade on your coattails. If we're going to start something, it needs to be something new that we can both build together.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you were 27 at that time?
Yeah.
And then how old was
my business partner is 38 years older, so
okay.
His birthday, he just turned 75, whatever he was when we started 7 years
okay.
ago. So 68, there we go.
Yeah, so you definitely felt.
Right, I was like, and so the world is different now, and so I didn't want to do things the way he'd always done it. So I was like, we can start something new together, but I didn't want to just join a partnership with him.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I also appreciated having him as a partner and having his experience, because that way I didn't feel like I was doing everything on my own. One of the things that I think is romanticized about starting your own firm is that you are then able to just, day one you are designing whatever you want and people are paying you hundreds of thousands of dollars. No, that's not that. The business of architecture is so much more nuanced, and there's so much more that goes into a project, getting it together. It's not just the design. And so having a partner kind of helps manage the workload a little bit more, because if studio is stressful, students, running a business is more. Yes. Yeah.
So have you ever had any problems, like not having a tiebreaker or anything like that?
Oh no, because I'm the majority owner. So
okay.
If you do have a partnership, someone has to be the majority owner, and choose accordingly.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
50-50 partnerships rarely work because you have to go to a third party and all that. So I recommend having a majority. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're
So
welcome.
you've been a co-founder now for
Yes.
almost 10 years, 7 years actually.
Yeah. Nuts.
Yeah. So has your role changed or transformed at all over these
Yes.
years? Like, I'm curious how you nurture your own personal
Mhm.
growth. It's always being at the top.
That's such a great question. Such a good question, because
Okay.
when you're working for someone else, then you're you have someone to go to check metrics.
Mhm.
Am I performing the way you want me to, and that sort of thing. When you're working for yourself, you have to set the bar and continually keep raising it. And so personal development is something that I spend a lot of time on. I didn't realize going into this how much personal development was going to tie into running a business, or how much I needed to do. Mainly because, particularly when it comes to asking for money, there's something that I had to work through, and that most people have to work through, with how do I do work and ask for money in a way that doesn't feel salesy or slimy, or like with used car salesmen. And I think as architects, we often are more humble when it comes to finances. It's like, oh, well, let me just do this and help them out. And oh, well, they loved it. I'm working so much more time because I love it and I'm so passionate about it. But really, my company's losing money because I'm spending so much time on this, and what I'm doing doesn't make business sense. So it's finding that balance, and then also being able to network. Go to talk to people you don't know. Talking to decision makers and high-powered people who, as an employee, you're thinking, oh, I can't talk to them, they're so fancy, they're so much higher above me. As a business owner, I have to go talk to them because I have to see, hey, there's a business opportunity and all of that. One of the things that I learned through the various courses and books and whatever, people hate being sold to, but people love getting help to buy. So it's one of those things where if you have a product and a service that you know is going to help people, then it's your duty to share that with them. But if you're only trying to share something because you want money, then that's a different conversation, and it comes off differently. Yes. And so I've been a very big fan of like Pat Flynn with Smart Passive Income, Marie Forleo has this really great B school, and she's just fantastic. Danielle Laporte, there's a whole bunch of resources I would love to share if you can put them in the show notes or something. That would be fantastic. Because the world is changing. Social media is a much bigger player. Students, if you don't know who Gary Vaynerchuk is, you need to find out who he is sooner rather than later, because the world and marketing and the way we communicate and the way that business works is different than it was than probably most of your boss's times and your parents and all that, and learning how to move forward based on current principles and what's projected going kind of for the future. It's going to be really helpful. Yeah.
Wow. So you've had tremendous success. It seems like everything is aligned and flowed. You mentioned your father's passing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask if, there were setbacks or obstacles along the way that threatened to deter you from the path that actually led you to where you are now. You had any struggles or stories you'd like to share?
And so we'll sidestep my dad's story for a little bit, although that was the impetus that got me to start the company, because I realized I could die tomorrow. What am I doing? And so aside from that, sustainability and preservation, I live and breathe it. But I failed the LEED exam twice. And so it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I'm about this, but why am I not passing this exam? Same with the AREs, I didn't pass all my ARE exams the first go round. And so it's one of those things where making sure that there's a healthy dose of perseverance and grit and sticking after it, even if you don't test well, or even if you have to do it more than once, because no one's going to care at the end once you get it. It's just a matter of sticking through and keeping going.
Yeah. And I think passion plays a big part of that.
Absolutely.
Because that's the motivator.
Exactly.
And helping the people, the buildings.
Yeah,
too,
exactly.
And
And one of the things, particularly as I was starting the firm and coming out of grad school and all of that, as many of you know, architecture is an older person's game. It's a beautiful thing.
We're supposed to hit our peak.
Exactly.
At 50 or
Right.
like
Exactly.
that.
And so it's kind of like between social and the idea of everyone needs to be an entrepreneur. If you're not making $1 million by the time you're 30, that's lies. And so there's a disconnect between the reality of the architecture profession. And it's great that I won Young Architect of the Year, Emerging Architect of the Year, but the Pritzker Prize, all that's maybe in my 60s, 70s, somewhere up there. It's a while. And so really staying passionate about it and doing the work that you want to do, and or working for people that are doing work that you want to do. I think that's huge. I don't think everyone needs to start their own firm. I don't know that I would have started it had my dad not died so suddenly. But everyone has a different journey, different path.
Yeah. Well, speaking of people that have inspired you, being Women's History Month, I want to ask, are there any women that have been on your mind recently, whether you're honoring, remembering, or being inspired by?
Absolutely. And it's funny you should ask this, because there is an exhibit coming up at Yale, or a symposium, on Norma Merrick-Skolaric. And she was one of the pioneering African-American women in the profession, breaking all sorts of glass ceilings back in the day. So she's one of the women who I was really thinking about recently. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, very good.
I'll have to read up more about her.
Absolutely. I recommend it.
And then I was thinking back to after you finished speaking at the WIELD event last fall. After the event, so many ladies came up to you, wanted to get a word with you. For those who didn't get a chance to talk with you, and for our listeners, is there a message you'd like to share, or some piece of advice you'd like to give now?
Yes. I would say you are young enough, regardless of how old you are, 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s, wherever you are. Listen to what you want to do in your voice. Let your expectations of yourself mean more than your expectations of someone else. As I've gotten older, I know a lot of people who are working jobs they hate, going into debt for things that they don't necessarily want, but they're trying to impress other people that they don't even like. So it's one of those things where make sure that you're actually doing things that you want to do for yourself, and that you're following your path as opposed to the path that you feel someone else expects you to follow.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. That means we can end it there. Thank
Sounds
you so
great.
much, Nakita.
You're welcome.
It's been a
Thank you.
pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me.